The air in the church was not just still, it was oppressive, thick with the scent of wilting lilies and the cold, unyielding finality of death. My father, Robert Hayes, was gone, and I, his only son, was standing beside the void his absence created, a void that was instantly and brutally filled by a stranger. I was frozen, anchored by grief, when she arrived, a woman in a dark, expensive suit flanked by Mr. Silas, a lawyer whose eyes held the predatory glint of a vulture. "I'm Alara Hayes," she announced, her voice a precise, emotionless instrument cutting through the silence of the mourners. "Robert was my father, and as his only other surviving heir, the terms of his updated will give me priority." I watched, paralyzed and numb, as the sheer scope of the betrayal unfolded. She didn't just claim a share, she claimed the entire $12 million estate, leveraging legal clauses that left me, the son he had raised, with nothing but the clothes on my back and the crushing weight of desecrated memories. The emotional shock was not a single event, it was a total, calculated eradication. She took the house, the business, the legacy, and my entire future. But the look in her eyes, that brief, arrogant flicker of victory, was too cold, too practiced. I refused to let her win. I knew then that my life's purpose had changed. I would embark on a desperate, meticulous hunt for the one thing they couldn't forge, couldn't corrupt, and couldn't control: the scientific truth hidden in her DNA. My name is Thomas Hayes. I was 38, an architect whose professional stability, whose entire conception of his own future was dismantled in the space of a single afternoon. My father, Robert Hayes, was a man defined by his meticulous planning and unwavering integrity, principles he had instilled in me since childhood. The idea that he would secretly disown me 2 weeks before his death, without a word, was the source of my deepest, coldest fury. It was a contradiction that burned hotter than any grief. The funeral scene was, in terrifying retrospect, the most strategically chosen point of ambush. The updated will was dated barely 14 days before my father's unexpected passing. The legal maneuver was surgically precise. Citing Alara as a recently identified direct, firstborn daughter, it granted her priority control over the $12 million liquid assets and the estate's primary holdings. The ruthless clause demanded immediate liquidation and distribution, ensuring my inheritance was reduced to a humiliating, unspendable pittance. The total calculated eradication of my future was complete. The cold, possessive certainty in Alara's eyes was the only fuel I needed for the grueling battle ahead. The financial ruin was immediate and absolute. Alara and Silas utilized emergency court injunctions not just to gain control of the house and corporate assets, but to secure a cripplingly high executor's fee, systematically draining the limited liquid reserves. I was forced to liquidate my own condo at a desperate loss, sacrificing equity simply to cover the initial fruitless consultations with legal counsel. My new reality was a single, claustrophobic room situated directly above a 24-hour laundromat, a physical manifestation of despair. The walls were paper-thin, offering zero thermal or acoustic insulation. The sensory environment was a constant, exhausting torture. The perpetual heavy mechanical thumping and high-pitched grinding whine of the industrial dryers served as my new, brutal, and relentless soundtrack, preventing any deep, restorative sleep. The air was perpetually thick with the cloying chemical scent of hot, synthetic detergent, ozone, and steam, a chemical cocktail that clung to my clothes, hair, and skin, becoming the unmistakable, persistent aroma of my poverty and shame. The harsh, flickering sodium lamps outside my single grimy window cast long, shifting shadows across the ceiling, ensuring that even darkness offered no visual peace. The physical exhaustion was profound, quickly morphing into chronic insomnia and persistent, stress-induced migraines. I was forced to accept low-rate, under-the-table architectural drafting work, laboring through the night on a cheap, unstable folding table. The humiliation was the sharpest tool in their arsenal. I deliberately severed all contact with former colleagues and friends, aware that Alara and Silas were feeding the professional community a malicious narrative that I was financially reckless, emotionally volatile, and that my father's decision simply confirmed his wisdom. My isolation was not an accident. It was a deliberate strategic maneuver designed to make me too ashamed, too exhausted and too isolated to mount any coherent defense. The conspiracy was intricately designed to sever all my potential support systems. Distant relatives witnessing Ilara's seamless transition quickly accepted the official narrative. Ilara hosted a series of highly public, staged memorial events, leveraging these to present forged evidence, fabricated journals, and carefully crafted letters to solidify her story of a recent, secret reconciliation. My psychological resistance began with forensic analysis. My father's distinct handwriting, specifically the signature, offered the first true scientific anomaly. Due to a severe sports injury decades prior, his signature exhibited a characteristic, subtle micro-hesitation and an inconsistent pressure point on the final loops of his surname, Hayes. I gathered every verifiable signature I could find: bank documents, property deeds, old insurance forms. I digitized them and used an architect's overlay software to compare the pressure maps. The signature on the will, while visually accurate, exhibited uniform, effortless pressure and a swift, uninterrupted flow, completely lacking the distinct physical fatigue and characteristic tremor that defined my father's final signatures. The preliminary analysis from Dr. Vance confirmed this signature is an unnaturally confident replication. It suggests careful tracing or confident freehand execution by a third party, entirely lacking the organic physical fatigue inherent in your father's final years. The scientific anomaly was the proof of the lie. The fight was now a purely forensic methodology.
The realization that the will was built on a lie demanded a complete shift in strategy. Legal battles require capital. Forensic truth requires meticulous, stealthy execution. I became the self-appointed clandestine field agent of my own life, focusing entirely on acquiring the unassailable biological evidence. My one ally was Mrs. Gable, the housekeeper, a woman who saw Ilara's calculated cruelty firsthand. I met her in a secluded public park, appealing to her deep-seated loyalty to my father's true values. I presented her with the digital overlay of the forged signature, demonstrating the cold, calculated nature of the fraud. I procured a professional-grade forensic DNA collection kit, serialized, tamper-proof evidence bags, sterile surgical gloves, and specialized collection instruments. The emphasis on the serialized bag and surgical gloves was paramount to establishing an ironclad, legally defensible chain of custody later. I instructed Mrs. Gable to retrieve the single item most likely to contain an abundant, concentrated sample of Ilara's shed epithelial cells and biological residue. She targeted the filter pad from Ilara's specialized ultrasonic humidifier located next to her bed. This highly concentrated source, rich in airborne DNA, skin cells, and microscopic saliva residue collected over several weeks, was far superior to any simple hairbrush. Mrs. Gable executed the mission under the pretext of a specialized HVAC filter replacement for the summer months. She successfully retrieved the filter pad, placing it directly into the serialized evidence bag using the surgical gloves. The handoff occurred at a prearranged high-traffic transit station. The sealed, serialized bag was immediately placed into a dedicated, locked metal container that I had pre-prepared. The evidence was now secured. The stage was set for the next, critical step: establishing the unassailable control samples and securing the forensic analysis. The retrieved sample, the DNA-rich humidifier filter pad, was merely the first piece of the puzzle. Without a verified paternal control and an unquestionable chain of custody, the scientific evidence would be easily dismissed by Silas as unethical and tampered. My entire strategy, born from months of despair in the laundromat, was built on forensic rigor and redundancy. The evidence needed two absolute countermeasures against legal challenge: a perfect control and a strategic, non-local lab. My father was a collector of fine-sealed, non-flavored throat lozenges, which he would always moisten with his lips before storing in a specific ceramic jar. I retrieved the final sealed ceramic jar, selecting a lozenge with trace saliva residue from the stem. This provided an untampered, high-yield saliva-based DNA control sample, far more reliable than old hair or skin cells. I placed this, along with my own cheek swab, as a half-sibling control, into a separate serialized evidence container. I bypassed all local facilities, knowing the cousin's influence. I traveled across 3 state lines to Paternity Science Solutions, Inc., a facility located in a distant, legally conservative state, an industry leader known for its unyielding chain of custody protocols and legal documentation standards. This choice was a strategic shield against local judicial bias and corruption. Before shipping the samples, I executed a crucial, legally necessary step to solidify the evidence. I hired a certified public notary and 2 independent licensed witnesses. They observed and documented me placing the sealed, serialized evidence bags, both Ilara sample and the paternal controls, into the secure labeled shipping container. This established a legally certified, non-local chain of custody document, signed, dated, and notarized. This document was the ultimate counterproof, rendering any future claim of tampering or illegal acquisition legally invalid. The forensic evidence was now armored. The 2-week waiting period felt interminable. Every hour stretched into an eternity spent suspended between the chemical steam of the laundromat and the high stakes of my single scientific gamble. The sealed report arrived by registered restricted access courier. The scientific conclusion was not a statistical probability, but a cold, final statement of absolute genetic exclusion. Comparative analysis of sample A, as in claimant, and sample C, as in deceased paternal control, conclusively establishes a probability of biological paternal relationship at 0.000001%, total exclusion. Key genetic markers essential for a first-degree lineal relationship are definitively absent. The hypothesis of biological parentage is conclusively rejected based on contemporary scientific standards. The truth was an absolute 0. Ilara Hayes was not Robert Hayes' daughter. The entire $12 million claim, the forged signature, the manufactured birth certificate, the deceitful will, was built on a scientifically falsifiable premise. Armed with the DNA and the notarized chain of custody, my cold rage became surgical precision. I immediately retained David Chen of Sterling & Associates. Chen recognized that the DNA was the ultimate leverage for a criminal prosecution, forcing an immediate civil surrender. We filed a detailed, preemptive report with the district attorney for forgery, commission of fraud, and grand larceny. The report emphasized the DNA exclusion combined with the traceable $1.8 million in converted assets, identified via an initial audit, proving the financial transactions were not based on error but on felony criminal intent. Chen located Mr. Johnson, the disgraced associate who drafted the will. Confronted with the DNA report and the threat of being charged as an accessory to felony fraud, Johnson, terrified of prison, provided a full, sworn affidavit detailing that Ilara paid him $25,000 cash, provided the forged signature template, and admitted her sole financial motive. This confession exposed the entire conspiracy, including Mr. Silas's indirect involvement. Chen enforced the strategy of factual detachment. I was not to show grief or anger. I was to deliver facts. I rehearsed my responses for hours. The legally verified DNA analysis, documented under the notarized chain of custody, is admissible. Your demand for a counter-test is a transparent attempt to delay the criminal referral, which is already with the DA's office. My only emotional response was precision and strategic dominance. The final settlement conference was set. The air in the boardroom was thick with expensive desperation. Ilara, Silas, and their defense team sat across the polished table, their arrogance replaced by dread. Chen began the proceedings not with an argument, but with the immediate presentation of the DNA report and the notarized chain of custody. Gentlemen, we are not here to debate probate. We are presenting certified scientific proof of fraud. The DNA analysis is conclusive. Ilara Hayes is not the decedent's daughter. The entire claim is invalid. Silas frantically scanned the report, his face going a mottled gray as he grasped the scientific finality. Ilara's composure shattered entirely. "This is an illegal sample. You tampered with the evidence. You are lying." I fixed my gaze on her, my voice low, steady, and utterly dominant, echoing the victory in the reference script. "We have the affidavit from your co-conspirator, Mr. Johnson, Ilara. We know you paid him to forge the documents. You stole $1.8 million under a scientific lie, and we have the financial trace. You are facing severe criminal prosecution for forgery and fraud. The choice is yours now." Chen delivered the ultimatum: uncontested surrender of the entire estate, full punitive damages, and immediate cooperation with the criminal investigation, or the full public felony charges are filed against Ilara and her associates within the hour. The surrender was immediate. Chen's team moved with surgical speed. They secured a comprehensive court order to freeze all converted assets, including the shell company accounts where the $1.8 million was hidden. The title to the family home was immediately transferred back. The entire fraudulent structure was dismantled in a single, devastating afternoon. Ilara lost the entire estate, faced criminal charges, and became a public pariah. I regained my inheritance, but the real victory was restoring my father's honor. I used the money not for revenge, but for the creation of the Robert Hayes Foundation, funding forensic science and ethics education, the very discipline that provided the unassailable truth that saved me. I returned to my life, carrying the scars of the betrayal, but also the quiet, cold confidence of a man who fought an impossible battle and won with meticulous scientific truth. The emotional wound healed slowly, replaced by the deep satisfaction that the truth, no matter how deeply buried, always surfaces when armed with forensic clarity. My dad's funeral revealed a secret daughter who took everything based on a bold, cold lie. But I refused to be a victim. I sought the scientific truth, and when I found the DNA results, I exposed the fraud and reclaimed my life. If you believe that the truth, when backed by forensic science, is the ultimate weapon, share your story in the comments. And if you agree that calculated integrity always defeats arrogant greed, hit that like and subscribe button.